From the beginning, the images we have created have stood like mile markers on the road of human progress. What once was is now because artists made it so. They captured a moment and made it eternal. Where did they get such power? Well, it was given to them, passed down through the ages, master to student, each building upon the other. John Stobart, one of the most accomplished artists of our time, says, "I don't think the greatest works have yet been done." And it's true, but only if the secrets are given to yet another generation. The first secret is this: it is not in the hand, it is in the eye. Follow us and we'll show you that once you learn to look at the world differently, it becomes a different world, one in which nature becomes the greatest teacher of all. On the island of Martha's Vineyard, the simple beauty of nature forms the backdrop for a classic outdoor painting and the setting for John Stobart to teach us some of the basic techniques of painting with oil.
There's quite a difference between painting from nature and painting a studio painting from reference material, such as the port scenes that I've been concentrating on for the last 25 years. And that is that outside, everything is there. There are no questions that are unanswered. They're all right in front of you. You don't have to think about the research or anything like that. You can get right on with it. And it's wonderfully easy, really, because all you've got to do is to use your expertise to get it down on canvas. I think that both of these forms of frames of reference, whether it's outside on the site or in the studio, they both have a tremendous challenge. On site, you almost have to stick with what you have and go with what you've decided to paint. But in the execution of it, it's wonderful because it's all spontaneous. We used to go on road trips to Birmingham. We went to see shows by Corot and Constable and all the masters, Turner and French landscape and one. And looking at all these gave me the idea that I could do this and I could learn to paint landscapes. And after all, what a wonderful thing to be able to take a canvas which is virtually, I mean, the expense of the canvas is nothing. You can achieve something of great value that might become of great value, and there's no very, very little production cost. That's what went through my head, and when I went to these shows, I thought, I think I could do that. I'm going to have a go at this. In wandering across the beach to search for a painting, the best position to paint this little inlet, I chose this one because it fits into what I would say a classic composition with a left-hand side, a right-hand side, an interest in a specific spot, a channel of water going into the distance, with also a possibility of a good sky. So there are all the elements in that one little painting of a winner. And the beauty is that everything is there in front of me. It's not as if I've got to create anything other than what I see. I have it all in front of me. I don't have any questions. All the answers are right here. Ever since I was at the first College of Art that I went to, I've used only 5 colors. And that is cadmium yellow, Winsor red, permanent green, French ultramarine, and burnt sienna. And there's no black here because the black seems to, for me, gets into everything and makes everything too gray. So I always make black with the burnt sienna and French ultramarine. There's nothing here that's blacker than the black I can get from this, and only in very, very rare circumstances would you need a pure black. Now what I do, I just draw with the paint. I never draw first. It's not necessary to draw first. I have a mixture here of turpentine and linseed oil, which is about 5 to 1, 5 turpentine, 1 to oil. So I'm basically getting the composition established and the key of where all the... I'm just placing everything where I need it. The first landscape I ever actually sold was one that I had done on the Thames in London, and I painted a little tugboat going by with some barges along the Thames with the buildings in the background. Actually, it's St. Paul's Cathedral in the background. And it was an interesting story because I didn't want to sell it. I wanted to keep it for a competition that the Royal Academy had. And I was very keen to keep it. And then somebody called me from one of the galleries where I'd left it. They'd asked me to leave it to show some people, and I had no idea that they wanted to sell it, and I had no idea of selling it at all. And along I went, and here was a very smart-looking Canadian gentleman in a Homburg hat and black overcoat, and I was introduced to him. And the final analysis is that he asked me, he said, "What do you want for that?" And I said, "Oh, it's not for sale." And he said, "Well," he said, "what would you have wanted for it if you did want to sell it?" So, of course, I was completely put off by that comment. I didn't know what to say, but I just said, my brain worked rapidly. I was living on £5 a week in London, so I thought I'd aim high, and I said between £5 and £10. And he immediately took his wallet out and absolutely new crisp bills, and £7, 10 shillings he counted out, and he said, "Would you take that for it?" And I looked at it and I said, "Yes, I will." I was so overwhelmed by the idea that I'd earn money for a painting. It just didn't, it had never occurred to me really before. But anyway, the great thing about painting from nature like this is that everything is in front of you, and you don't need to think about whether you should do this or that. You just do what's in front of you. For instance, if there are 3 artists here in a row, all painting the same thing, each painting should show or will show the personality of that artist. They should all be very different in appearance at the end of the day. What I'm really doing is expressing what I think this scene should look like. As each artist that paints something out of doors, on the spot, can express it in his own terms. He can alter it a little bit or leave it exactly as it is. Some beautiful colors in here. Now, one of the things that I remember very clearly was that I was always drawing. I was just a terrible student. I didn't concentrate in class, so I failed miserably at school. That was the bottom line of that. And so, of course, when I left school, I didn't get my school certificate, and my father had the presence of mind, because I was drawing all the time, to put me into the local College of Art. What I'm doing now is to basically cover the canvas with paint so that it gets all nice and sticky and gooey, so that I can make alterations by putting new paint on, and the new paint will either push the other paint out of the way, or, in other words, it all gets to be rather nicely workable. And it might look terribly difficult to the initial viewer, but in actual fact, it's one of those wonderful things that with practice, it becomes easy. If you do it regularly, and you compare the 4th one with the first one, you can already see terrific improvement. It's a bit like learning to play the piano, I suppose. It's rather the same thing. You're not going to learn to play the piano by talking about it or by looking at books or reading about it in books. The only way you're going to learn to play is to be actually doing it and playing it. Now, all this paint that I'm putting on now will have more paint put on top of it. This is just, I'm just sketching it in here. It's really about expression. It's not about copying the thing exactly as it is. It's about looking at it and doing then what you want to do with it. But the nearer that you can get to it, the better you are off. When I get to the Royal Academy of Art in London, I was amazed. I really didn't like London at all when I first got there. I had to find I had to find digs, and I've ended up in a place where nobody else spoke English. And I was very lonely because I didn't know anybody in London. I was there on my own. And I caught the number 11 bus down to Piccadilly, where the Royal Academy is. What did happen was that I was in London, and I could go down to the Thames, which were fabulous subjects of little tugboats pulling barges up the river with St. Paul's in the background. And just the exciting thing about London was the galleries that were all over that Bond Street area. Okay, now the stage that I'm at the moment is that I want to develop the sky a little more and try and resolve all the spaces that I haven't resolved up to now, because I was working on this, trying to get the light effects as the sun was moving rapidly round. And it doesn't give you that much time. Got about a 2-hour window of opportunity to do an outdoor painting if you want to complete it on the spot, which is always the preferable thing to do. But as in the case of Corot and Constable, they both, and many other artists that I could name, they used the winter to do their what I would call studio paintings, and the summer to go out and travel and to do their outdoor paintings on site. So, because all artists need to get back to nature to get reinvigorated for their period in the studio, and you learn so much by painting here. You could never dream this up. This is not something you could sit at home and do from a photograph or something. It's just not possible. There are lots of colors here in the shadows that one's eye can see that would not come out in a mechanical image of this. You can see into the light and you can see into the dark, and your eyes change their focus and their whatever it is that needs the light and dark. Here now it's all backlit, for instance, but you can still see into all the shadows. And this is where you learn these finer points. I personally think that the world's at the feet of the aspiring landscape painter now, the inspired painter who wants to work out of doors. And it's such a beautiful thing to give people pleasure and give people happiness by having something that they really enjoy and appreciate, your vision of, and you can do this for people. You can give them happiness, and it's a wonderful thing. And plus the fact, of course, that you also have a shot as an artist at immortality, because your painting will last forever if it's looked after. Of course, when the war was on, I always remember my father was paranoid about absolute total silence when Churchill made his speeches. And I do recall very clearly this one speech where Churchill had come to placate the young men of the nation, because the young ladies were all rushing off to the camps of the American troops, and in droves, because they were having such a good time. And but the men were very upset. So Churchill came on and made a wonderful speech, and in it he said, what you got to realize is the Americans are overpaid, overfed, oversexed, and over here. And after I'd heard that comment, I thought, well, America would be a wonderful place to go and live. It's getting to the exciting point, because it looks as if it's going to work quite well. Every brush stroke, if it's well thought out and well considered, and will improve the sense of light. So anyway, I went to New York with the paintings, and I was on the train going to, I'd slept on the train. And who should sit beside me? Coming into New York, the commuters were getting on, and I saw this gentleman looking through books on art, and it was the editor of the American Artist magazine, Donald Holden. I said, where would I take averagely good paintings of clipper ships at sea? And he thought for a bit, and he gave me 4 names of the galleries. The first one I went to happened to be the best one that I could possibly have done. It was the Wunderlich family who ran it. It was called Kennedy Galleries. But the Wunderlich family were very prominent in Western paintings and marine paintings and Americana. And I took these in, and believe it or not, they offered me a show. I mean, I spent more hours walking around London looking for representation, and they'd say, no, we don't take new artists, you know. And I'd got nowhere in London. But here, the first place I go to in New York, thanks to meeting this fellow on the train, they offer me an exhibition. I mean, I was on cloud 9 when I left that place. So I was really in clover at this point, and I suddenly realized that this was it, that I'd struck my my gold. I went home to England and I did an exhibition. In about 18 months, I painted 20 paintings. And my first exhibition in New York was a sellout. And all these options you have, and it's just a wonderful thing, I think, to be a painter. I love it, and I hope that I can inspire young people particularly to, if they ever think of doing it, it's a wonderfully rewarding thing to do. It gives you a big kick, and it's very fulfilling to know that you can give other people pleasure, and to go out yourself and see the improvement yourself. It's a wonderful line of work. What I find is that when I come here, I've actually learned about this house, and I have that recorded in my memory. I have it recorded. I could go and paint exactly this, for instance, and do this all tomorrow without any trouble at all, because I remember every salient point in this. And I've learned the structure of that house. I know why, you know, where the roof, the shape of it, I could almost figure out what the plan was inside the house. So I know about the house, I know about the boat. I know how, you know, I've been walking around a little bit and I can see where the wharves are, and I know the interrelation here, that there's a passage out to sea on the other side. Through here there's a passage out to sea. And all these things add up into the painting. They all become parts of it. So it's very important to do the on-site painting directly and not even think about taking a photograph and copying it. That's very detrimental. When I was at the Royal Academy, as I finished my years there, I had noticed that something really different was going on in the art world. For instance, the media had picked up on this one work of art, so-called, where somebody had ridden a bicycle through a puddle of ink and over the paper, and in several directions, and this had been exhibited, and the media had picked up on this, and it had got great coverage, and this sort of bizarre sensationalism was being picked up. It was causing an abandonment of learning to draw and paint. Now in America, for instance, and I'm sure in England too, and other countries, it's very, very difficult to get an education in the basics of drawing and painting. And so the expertise to draw and paint is no longer being passed on. It's being cut off. And so where the new teachers to teach drawing and painting in the future are going to come from, I just don't know. Yeah, one of the things that has really made an impression on me is the vulnerability of the student after he leaves the umbrella of the College of Art. Well, I want to be able to encourage them to keep with it, and even if they have to pump gas or something for a while, if you're really keen to do something, you can get to the point that these things are saleable in quite a short space of time. I did that. As I sit here in this lovely spot and getting on with the painting and see it coming to fruition like this, I can't help thinking of when my father had put me into the College of Art because I'd failed so miserably at school. Although One doesn't need to always succeed. One can still get a tremendous lot out of it through just doing it for pleasure. One doesn't have to earn money from it, but I always think of those things that my father said. I wish he could see me now.